Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstien has reached an agreement with Attorney General William Barr to stay on at the Justice Department for, quote, a little while longer. Rosenstien, who planned to step down in mid-March, is still the main liaison between the department and Special Counsel Robert Mueller, but it's Barr who has had main oversight of the probe since his confirmation. Joining me now is Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Good to see you, Tom. So isn't it about time for Rosenstien to move on?
Look, it seems to me that Mueller is still running the Justice Department. The Attorney General has got to take back control of his Justice Department. Rod Rosenstien and Mueller have been working closely together on this abusive investigation targeting President Trump. Rosenstein is responsible for obstruction of congressional investigations, covering up every which way he can, details about the abuses of the Justice Department and the FBI in targeting President Trump and others. And it's just remarkable to me that the Attorney General continues to have him in place in this position of power. He's effectively running the Justice Department as number two. That's what the DOJ does. And by outsourcing control of the Justice Department to Rod Rosenstien, Mr. Barr is sending a signal that it's business as usual at the deep state.
How long do you think he'll be there? I mean, it can't go on that much longer, can it?
Well, I think they've nominated someone to take over his slot. Yeah. So, you know, but it could be 4, 5, 6 months before that position's filled. So he could continue to, as you highlight at the beginning of the segment, effectively collaborate with Mr. Mueller as he continues this presidential harassment campaign.
Well, meanwhile, we're learning a little bit more about the deep state and the witch hunt through the Michael Cohen revelations. The search warrant was released. There's so much of it is redacted. Have you tried reading in between the redactions to try to come to some conclusion about it?
You know, I think the big takeaway of this is that you had the Mueller operation behind the abusive effort to impede on the president's attorney-client relationship with Michael Cohen. They immediately began dismantling that expectation of privacy that clients have for communications with their attorneys almost immediately upon his coming into office, Mr. Mueller. And then they outsourced it to the Southern District of New York later, but they weren't really fooling anyone because they were obviously operating as avatars for Mueller in raiding Cohen in that really unusual raid of an attorney. You know, the president's attorney was subject to investigation. I don't think they had good reason to target him other than the fact he was the president's attorney. And again, Mueller behind an audacious attack on the president. You know, I tell you, the Attorney General has got to figure out what's going on there. And if I were him, I'd freeze the whole operation till he figures out what's up and down in terms of all the peculiar activities and corruption involved in the operation, including Strzok Page, the hiring, the firing, the FISA warrants. Why would he allow that investigation to go forward given all the concerns about abuse of the Justice Department and the FBI?
Well, and the concerns now are boiling over in the American public. I mean, it's not, you don't have to be a fervent Trump supporter in order to believe it's a witch hunt. Now the majority of Americans do. They got the message. They understand it. I mean, there is enough evidence and there's enough push, I think, from the public itself to justify ending this thing, no?
I agree. You know, the Justice Department was in court today arguing that states attorney, Maryland and other states had no business harassing the president on this emoluments clause absurd litigation.
Yeah.
Yet the Justice Department seems to take the position they have a right to harass the president. And they can investigate him any way they want. And this Mueller report is being used as a way to further abuse the president, hanging it over him. And just causing worry and consternation about the operation of our government. Again, this is the Justice Department. The president, under our Constitution, controls the Justice Department, yet the Justice Department is operating as if it's a fourth branch of government. And the Attorney General, I think, needs to fix that.
Well, despite all of this, despite all the roadblocks to success, the president continues to chalk up victories, the most recent with the Supreme Court over immigration. It was a close decision. It was 5-4. But we read some comments by Justice Thomas just moments ago. What do you think of this decision?
Well, it's a big victory for the rule of law. It's a case that goes back to the Obama administration, so this wasn't even a Trump administration policy. Look, the left is attacking our efforts to uphold the rule of law on immigration by affording illegal aliens rights they're not due under our Constitution. And in this case, they wanted aliens who were released and not picked up immediately by ICE, wanted to give them the ability, despite having committed crimes for which they had been jailed otherwise, to be out free on the streets. And the court said, no, the law doesn't allow that. And, you know, just because ICE gets around later to arresting someone who ought to be detained doesn't mean they give up their rights to detain them. And it's a common sense decision, but the closeness shows that there's this legal effort underway to undermine the rule of law on immigration. And I tell you, you know, a further challenge to this law may succeed with the Supreme Court, and again, it will be just open borders mania as a result.
Well, and as I said, I was disappointed. It was as close. It was a win, but it shouldn't have been a 5-4 decision. And yet there you go. Tom Fitton, great to see you, my friend. Thank you very much for being here.
The Mueller report is still looming. My next guest says the amount of corruption behind it is unbelievable, and it will be quite a test for the new Attorney General. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton joins me now to explain. All right, Tom, you appeared at CPAC with Congressman Devin Nunes. One of the things that you said that got my attention was that this Justice Department has no business writing a report on the president's conduct. Explain that.
Well, the president's president. He has a right to fire people like James Comey. He has a right to communicate with the Russian ambassador and otherwise run the government. And the idea that the Justice Department is writing a report on the president's conduct as president is ridiculous.
You make it so simple and so easy.
And Attorney General Barr should be asking that. We understand, Mr. Mueller, that you've indicted all these people or prosecuted them. That's on the public record.
Right.
But your opinion about the president's conduct as president, it's about as worthy as anyone else's opinion, and the Justice Department isn't paying you to give us another dossier on President Trump. We already have one corrupt dossier, and the idea that his activist attorneys working for him, Mr. Mueller, most of whom are anti-Trumpers, will be writing some dossier on President Trump is something that needs to be rejected.
And who are you referring to?
Well, his number two, Andrew Weissman, is an anti-Trumper. We found an email to Sally Yates, the anti-Trump Obama holdover that the president had, you know, saying, I'm in awe of you after she did something outside the law and preventing the president's travel ban from being defended. And he went to Hillary Clinton's election night party. This man's going to be writing a report on President Trump. No, thank you.
All right. Let's talk about, there's still so many documents from this investigation that we haven't seen. Where are the efforts now by Judicial Watch to get that stuff out? And are we going to get any information from Congress? And, you know, what do we need to see that we aren't seeing?
Well, Congress has asked, like Devin Nunes has asked for certain material to be declassified from his investigation, including witness testimony. They've been sitting on that over at the deep state. The FISA warrant application still hasn't been fully declassified.
Isn't that up to the president?
It is up to the president, ultimately.
Why do you think he's holding back on that?
Because the deep staters who pretend to be on his side come in and say you can't intervene here.
Why?
On behalf of transparency. Because it's about protecting the Mueller operation. They don't.
No, I know why they're doing, but what do they tell the president? We want you to defend Bob Mueller?
Yeah, that's exactly. My guess is they come in and say, if you release this information, it's going to make it seem like you're interfering in the investigation.
All right.
But it's important, you know. But we're still getting the documents out despite the obstruction. We're going to have another batch of documents showing communications between Bruce Orr and Christopher Steele, the Clinton spy.
Yeah, right. We already know they were yakking it up when they weren't supposed to.
But when you look at the documents, Judge, you wonder what anything else Orr was able to do but communicate with Steele. It was unbelievable, the number of communications. And it was desperation on the part of Steele to get this information.
So now we've got Bill Barr, the new Attorney General. Anybody with half a brain knows that the investigation should be of the Clintons and buying the uranium and resetting and all that other hogwash. What is Bill Barr about? What is he going to do?
I don't think Bill Barr is going to come into the Justice Department and overturn tables. I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to shut down Mueller. Look, you know,
I don't want him to shut down Mueller. Let Mueller do his thing. It's ridiculous.
well, you know, he's not going to investigate Hillary Clinton. You know, we're talking about a Mueller report. Where is the Justice Department in terms of investigating the coup attempt against President Trump, the abuse of the FISA process, the illicit spying on President Trump? And right now, Mueller is still being allowed to go around and abuse the process, the rule of law,
so you don't
to
think
target
Barr's
people
going
who
to
are
be?
affiliated
I
with
hear
President
Barr's
Trump.
a straight shooter.
He may be a straight shooter, but you have to be. I think the president's going to have to intervene to get this justice done here.
All right, Tom Fitton, thanks so much.